changes this year that make challenges for us, that the fans in the stands, if they watch TV on Saturday and Sunday, it's not anything like high school football on Friday night. There's no such thing as an uncatchable football in high school football.
The council is now in session.
With a personality shaped by being an athlete and a background in mainstream sports media, I found that the stories I was most interested in telling were the ones often overlooked, the ones that might not otherwise be told, the ones that show the intangible and not just the highlight reel. The Sports Council is about highlighting the great, the good, the unique, and everything in between in the Pacific Northwest sports world. I'm Jamie Council. Thanks for joining me.
You're listening to the Sports Council on 1340 ESPN, the Tri-Cities leader in sports.
Happy Thursday, August 31st, and welcome to the Sports Council. I'm Jamie Council. And how's everybody's Thursday going? Can you believe it's almost September? Like, what happened to this summer? What happened? It literally flew by, and now I'm ordering pumpkin spice lattes. Like, what happened? So a little disappointed about that, but a silver lining is it is football season. High school football starts tonight. Friday Night Lights, it's Friday. No, it is Thursday. Why high school football on Thursday? Well, we will get there. So a little bit of foreshadowing there, but I love covering high school football for a couple different reasons. And I think the first is just the character development that goes on where you're really seeing the person, because not a lot of people move on to play college sports. So you're really seeing who they are as a person, and even that it portrays who they are as an athlete, how good of a teammate they are, how of a hard worker. Maybe they're not athletic, but they work their butt off and they'll beat somebody that's more athletic. And I think those are transferable skills that they will carry on no matter what they do, whether they're a doctor, an electrician, whatever it is. Those are transferable skills when it comes to teamwork, how you treat people, how you communicate with people. And you really see that at a high school level. Once you go on, it's a job. It's a job. And especially with NIL, with all of the conference, it's going to be national leagues in the college game, which is just like the professional. Besides, it's not professional because the NCAA obviously doesn't pay players. Schools don't pay players, allegedly. So, high school, you really don't have to deal with a lot of those things. You really just get to play for the love of the game. And once you go on into college or even into the professionals, I think that's what gets those players and motivates them every day is the memories that they had as a kid playing. And you see that through who develops these youth athletes, former players. So even if they didn't go on, or even if they did, I mean, you take a look, and just last week we were talking about Reggie Jones in the Air Sports Academy, a Super Bowl champion, now devotes his time to developing the youth, and there's countless others. You see Alex Singleton, linebacker for the Broncos, saying, hey, what's some high school football I can check out? Matt Johnson in the MCC, former Cowboys player, short-lived, but he made it to the highest level. And they get back into it because they love the game and it's their way of giving back. So you're really seeing that brotherhood, sisterhood, maybe. My former teammates of the Rush, a lot of them posting on their Instagram right now that they're coaching at various levels, and that's really cool to see. So those are just a few reasons why I love covering high school football. It's just something that you don't get at any of the other levels. And so with that being said, Thursday night football. You wouldn't be able to have high school players without the dedicated coaches, trainers, a lot of them being former athletes, and you wouldn't be able to have high school football without officials. There's an official shortage right now, an official shortage of officials right now. It's nationwide, and especially in Eastern Washington. And this is something I covered during the pandemic of why is it so bad in Eastern Washington? That's because the population is growing. So you're seeing a growing need for officials because of the growing population while the numbers are declining. So I'm not a math major, but those are opposite graphs. There is an official shortage. So they're having to move games to Thursday nights, to Saturdays, and they can only take on a certain number of games. So instead of explaining it, I had the chance to sit down with Jeff Kinne, a local representative for the officials organization, to find out how they're dealing with covering high school sports.
So my name is Jeff Kinne, and I'm the president of the Tri-City Sports Officials Association for football.
So how long have you been officiating?
This is my 29th season.
29th season, not quite 30.
No, this is 29, almost 30.
And what got you into officiating?
Just the love of the sport. You know, I didn't play football beyond high school, but it definitely was. It's my sport. It's what I love, and when I got an opportunity to get back on the football field and be a part of it, I jumped at the chance and never looked back.
And what's been your favorite part of it?
The camaraderie, you know, the group of guys that you develop the friendships with, and just the networking, just great guys that are out here for the love of the game and being out here so the kids have the ability to play the games.
I feel like that's one part that people don't really recognize or don't really want to recognize, where it's like out of sight, out of mind, but
Yeah.
that's not really the case anymore. It's not out of sight, out of mind, where we're seeing a lot of changes. So this is something that I've had conversations with you over the past couple years. What is the current state of officials?
Nationwide, everybody's hurting. We're all aging out. You know, the median age of officials in Washington State is 54. I'm almost there. COVID was a devastating blow to officiating. The mask mandate, you know, it's an outdoor sport. A lot of our officials really struggled with that. The requirement to wear it when we did return or have officiating during COVID. The vaccination requirements, those that refused to be vaccinated were not eligible to officiate and just kind of walked away from it. We lost quite a few officials just because of that.
And another reason, when I was doing my research as well, is during the pandemic, you're not a full-time official. I mean, there are full-time officials at the higher levels, but there's not a full-time high school football official. It's a part-time job. And when there wasn't sports for a year, people found other part-time work.
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond work, I mean, nobody does this you're not earning a living at high school sports officiating, not at all. Nobody does this for the paycheck. And so when that wasn't there, they found other things to do. Golf, I know, was one of those sports that just took off during COVID, and it has carried over. It's hard to make a tee time now. And, cornhole became a huge thing that, wasn't really known prior to that. And now you see it on ESPN. Folks, they just found other things to do and found that, I'm okay not going back out on the football field. I found this other thing that I can do.
Did you know that there is an ESPN The Ocho? Like seriously?
Oh, absolutely, yes, absolutely. I watched the Pillow Fight Championships a few weeks ago.
Oh, are you going to officiate those?
No. Again, it's doing what I enjoy. Pillow fights aren't my thing.
There you go.
It was fun, comedic relief to watch it, but and to see that ESPN was carrying it was quite comical.
Yeah, I watched the stair climb on that, where they basically have stairs, put a tarp on it, and put a bunch of soap on it, and people tried to climb it. So that is an official ESPN The Ocho sport. My favorite is the tag. The tag is kind of cool because
I've seen that as well. Yeah, it's crazy, the things that are now a sport. Wait till we see them in the Olympics, right?
Getting back to football, numbers have gone down. Referees aging out, finding other ways to make money, different mandates go against beliefs, therefore cutting officials that you don't have room to cut.
Correct.
How many officials do you have here in the Tri-Cities?
So coming into this season, we had roughly 40 officials in our association, and not nearly enough to cover the 17 schools that we service. We cover Sunnyside, Grandview, Prosser, Kiona-Benton, all of the Tri-City schools, to include Hermiston, which is part of the MCC, Burbank, Riverview, Connell. Connell's as far north as we go. But then we have Tri-City Prep and Liberty Christian and, all of the Richland, Kennewick, Pasco schools. So that makes up our 17 schools.
And how do you make the numbers work with the amount of officials that you have?
Well, given availability of officials on any given night and those that just aren't ready, or those that have aged out and aren't able to work a varsity level game anymore, we had to put a cap on the number of assignments that we could fill on a Friday night. And even this, we did this last year, and we had to do it again this year, where we capped it at 6 games or 30 officials. That gives us that little buffer to try and fill in where the guys are on vacation. It's an anniversary. It's there's reasons why they can't officiate on that particular Friday night. And so we asked the schools back in April, hey, our forecast is not looking good. Can you try and schedule as many games outside of Friday as possible so that we can provide you the best officials we have with the numbers that we have? And that had some success. When the first schedule started populating in the system, we had 12 games already scheduled on alternate nights. After we looked at the schedule, though, in early July, I looked at it and I realized we had 17 more games that still needed to be moved, or we just wouldn't be able to cover them.
Yeah, you take a look, just math, 30 officials, you guys cover 6 games, 17 schools, they each play one person. Even if they do out of conference, you're looking at 8 or 9 games, depending on what that looks like, if they're home or away with that other school. So with those changes, what is the process? You guys do a lottery, by my understanding, where you can't just be like, well, you know what, I don't like Richland or I don't like Mayakin. You guys have to move all your games. It's not like that.
No, it's not like that at all. So again, we continued to work with the schools and with the chairman of the MCC, who is an athletic director for Southridge, but he works with all of the Mid-Columbia Conference schools, and he represents their organization. And he really worked hard with me to try and make some moves and get some schools to find alternate dates. And we just got to where we just weren't going to be able to get those dates moved voluntarily for everybody, because they were all kind of waiting for somebody else to move first. And so we had to go to a lottery draw Wednesday of last week. And the criteria that we used for that was, one, we couldn't have more than 30 assignments on any Friday night. And so the first thing we did was identify homecomings. We wanted to make sure those were protected. That's, we don't want to take those away from anybody. The next one we wanted was non-league significant travel. It's more for the small schools, because most of these smaller schools, their opponents are coming from Okanagan and La Center and Cle Elum, and so significant distances to travel here, whereas most of the MCC, it's across the river. They, not much of a commute. So we looked at that for those non-leagues. Now, Mount Si's coming over to play Chiawana, and fortunately that was one that was already scheduled on a Saturday. So that was one piece. The other thing that we did was if there was a school that was drawn and they were up for draw the next week, we took them out of the drawing so that no school experienced a back-to-back loss of Friday nights, because Friday Night Lights is what it's about for the kids, and we love the Friday Night Lights, and so we didn't want to take that away from them. And most of our schools only have 4 home games as it is, and so to have 2 of those to not be on a Friday night, and one is homecoming, and it is an impact for the communities and the kids. So that was the criteria. We initially had also included an exemption for SWX games, because that's a big deal for the kids and the parents, and a lot of people really look forward to those televised games, and it's opportunity for the kids to get game film, and and for us, we enjoy doing those games because we can now on Sunday go back and say, hey, there I am. And so we had initially exempted those, but the MCC asked us not to consider that as an exemption, because what they opted for was just, if we've got 3 schools playing on a night when you have to do a lottery draw, just put in 3 tokens for the MCC, and we'll decide amongst us how we can best make those games fit into our schedule. They have a lot more to juggle than the smaller schools, in that most of our big schools share a stadium. Lamson, Edgar Brown, Fran Risch, multiple teams sharing a stadium, and then soccer as well, and they predominantly play under the lights, or so they're trying to juggle that. The smaller schools, they don't have the big school problems, so they didn't want a televised game to be the reason that they can't move a particular game. They wanted to be able to move those games and do what was best for the MCC.
Exactly. And another thing that you look at is also ticket sales. When you only have 4 home games, you're not going to get as many people coming through your gates Saturday at 1 o'clock or Thursday than you are Friday Night Lights.
And that is a huge thing. And, that was one of the ADs says, we lose $1,000 in gates by moving to an alternate day. So it definitely is an impact on the schools.
And how do you maintain those relationships? Working with Rick over at Southridge, it sounds like, and it just sounds like you guys have a very good working relationship, and you have to.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that we've tried to work with them on is helping us with recruiting officials to help with the middle school games, and because if we've got some high school kids that will get registered and certified, we can assign those youth officials to the middle school games and relieve us a little bit, so we're not stretched so thin. And we've had great success with some of our schools. In fact, Hermiston has initiated a sports officiating class that will be starting up right after this school year, and I'm supposed to be going down there the first week of September to meet with the class. They've already got 8 students enrolled, and that's going to be huge for us when we have to cover a 4 o'clock middle school game in Hermiston, and I've already got a crew of officials down there. I only have to maybe send 1 veteran adult official to go down there and help those guys out to run that game, instead of trying to find 3 guys at 4 o'clock that, when their day job allows them to get there. That's our stretch and struggle.
Yeah, and it probably makes them better football players as well, understanding the rules or knowing how to, communicate with the officials. I think that's one thing in these scrimmages is that I've noticed even last year was that they're teaching players how to talk with the officials, make sure you're on sides, check different things.
Correct, yeah. And the thing that I've also talked to a lot of the coaches, because they all know kids, because they all teach as well. They're all there at the high schools. They know kids that don't play football that could still come out and be a great sports official. So he doesn't have to be a football player to come out. We'll take anybody that wants to come out and learn the game and officiate.
Over some of the changes, you guys did the lottery. Some schools voluntarily changed. What changes have been made to the schedule? Because you guys just had the lottery on the 17th, so fairly recent.
Yeah, so we had, like in week 1, the MCC had 2 games drawn that had to be moved, and week 2, Kiona Benton had a game and Liberty Christian were drawn and they're moving, and the MCC was drawn and it had to move a game. Week 3 was kind of the oddity in that we had 3 games pre-scheduled for that week already on a Thursday night, and so we actually only have 4 home games on that Friday night. So we are sending 2 crews to help the Moses Lake Association, because just like us, they don't have enough to cover all of their games, and they're asking for help. We asked for help, and Walla Walla, which is also a very small association, on September 22nd, they have no home games. So they're like, we have 3 crews available. And before I could scoop all 3 of them up, Pullman and Moses Lake grabbed one, and so I was able to get one. So that reduced 1 lottery draw for that week. But essentially every week of the season, there's anywhere from 1 to 3 games that had to be moved to an alternate night.
You know, you talk about the camaraderie within your group here in the Tri-Cities, covering 17 schools, but also camaraderie around the whole state of Washington and the WOA.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a large group of us every year that travel to the west side for the state finals, and this year they're going to hold it at Husky Stadium and get back to a single location for all 6 classifications, with 3 games on the Friday and 3 on Saturday. So that's great for us. We've already reserved a big Airbnb for our group, so we'll have a place close to the stadium so that we'll be able to commute to and from. And yeah, it is. It's a brotherhood. It's a camaraderie. It's amazing.
And you guys are on the same team. It seems like everybody else is on a different team sometimes. And that's the tough part, and that's another reason why it's hard to recruit, because you hear the things that the crowd chants, and how do you guys deal with that?
Well, that's definitely one of the challenges for keeping the new officials. That's also just getting them to come out the first time. We did a recruitment this year at the Tri-City Men's Expo, and you wouldn't believe how many people walked by our booth and were just like, no, and hey, come over. Nope, I don't want to be the guy. I don't want to get yelled at. I know what you guys go through. I've been that guy. I don't want to. Nope, I don't want any part of that. It is a challenge, to hear the folks in the stands that are calling us out basically for something that they saw that maybe we didn't see, or something that we didn't call for the reasons that we have. And the rules of football are black and white, but we officiate in the gray. There's philosophies to what we do, and it is written into our books that, if it doesn't affect the play, maybe it's a talking to. And, a great example is, the run goes to the right, but on the left side of the field, a player was held. Everybody in the stands may have seen that, but it didn't affect the play. And the officials may have seen that as well, but they're not going to throw the flag because it didn't affect the play. That might be a good talking to that player, or, yell out to the official across the field, hey, keep an eye on 74. He's grabbing a lot of jersey. Make sure 74 hears it. Make sure the coach hears it. He's probably not going to hold the next play. So there's a lot of work on the field that the fans in the stands don't see and hear from us.
Exactly. And there's going to be wrong calls. Like you mentioned, they have a different angle. You were looking at a different player. And that's one thing I love about it, is because there is that human aspect. The hand to Maradona would have never happened had there been instant soccer replay back when. And in football at the higher levels, you do have that. So I like the human aspect of it, but therefore there's going to be those calls. That's going to happen. But I think even when the right call is made, right call according to you, that people are always going to complain. That's just what they like to do, and they like to support their team. They like to be passionate, which is great, but it also sometimes makes your job a little harder.
Yeah, and and that's so true. I mean, for us to throw the flag, we have to see the whole play. And there's 4 of us on sub-varsity, 3 on middle school, and 5 of us on Friday nights, and we all have our areas of responsibility, and we just don't always see the whole play. You got 22 players out there moving multiple directions, and again, it's philosophy and judgment and what did you see. And somebody might have information that I need that helps me make the right decision. That's why you might see us come together and wave off a flag when half the stadium agreed with the flag and the other half didn't. And then when we get together and wave it off, it's because somebody else had a different angle. And, maybe one guy pushed first, the push off for the separation, or they were both fighting for the ball. Was the ball tipped going over the middle, making it so it's not pass interference. And, some of the rule changes this year that make challenges for us that the fans in the stands, if they watch TV on Saturday and Sunday, it's not anything like high school football on Friday night. There's no such thing as an uncatchable football in high school football. If you're an eligible receiver and the ball is in the area, you can't make contact. I mean, that's pass interference. Not so in, college and the NFL. So there are challenges that the rule differences make it challenging for us to officiate to the fans that don't know all the rules that we have to learn.
Yeah, that was actually leading into my next question. You're listening at what I wanted to talk about. The rule changes, that's something with officials and the stands is sometimes the people watching love their green and gold. What they don't know, though, are the rules. So what are some common things, or maybe highlighting some of the new rules that are going to be implemented that you guys hear from the stands?
Well, so last year they made a rule change for intentional grounding, which high school was just really slow getting to it. And we would hear it forever. He was outside the pocket. He was outside the pocket. Well, in high school football until last year, that didn't matter. It didn't matter. If he didn't have a receiver in the area, he can't throw it away. He can't throw it into the stands. So last year they made that change that if the quarterback gets outside of the pocket, which the pocket is made up typically from the outside shoulder, tackle to tackle, if he rolls out of that and gets the ball to the line of scrimmage, extended, which means he can send it, 20 rows deep into the stands, that's no longer a penalty. You don't have to have a player in the area. Now, if the ball doesn't get to the line of scrimmage, you could have intentional grounding. So, I mean, that's a big one that we hear a lot. The other is the horse collar tackle. By rule, it has to be grasped, from inside the yoke or the nameplate, and the offensive player pulled backwards to the ground without any other defenders making contact. So if a guy grabs him by the back of the jersey and he's holding him, and somebody else comes in and finishes the tackle, it's not a penalty. If he grabs him and yanks him back, but he doesn't go to the ground, he breaks away or he falls forward, it's not a penalty. It's ugly, and I don't always agree with it because it doesn't look right, but the rule is backwards into the ground without another defender. So that's a challenge when people see it, and it looks bad sometimes.
Are there any other rule implementations that people should be aware of this year for the high school game?
The biggest one, and it's more about penalty enforcement, it was just a long time coming, is that it used to be penalties were a spot foul if it committed by the offense. So if a tackle holds a defender 3 or 4 yards behind the original line of scrimmage, you would step the penalty off from where it happened. Now those penalties are enforced from the previous spot, so wherever the ball was snapped from. It was a double down kind of penalty, and we're probably going to see more declined penalties out of something like this, depending on what the result of the play was, as opposed to backing them up further and giving them another play. That's what we anticipate, is we'll probably see more declined penalties and take the result of the play.
And it wouldn't be fair of me to do this interview, take all your time without giving you an opportunity to invite others to put on the stripe. So talk about if somebody is interested in getting involved, what does that process look like?
So you go online, go to www.washingtonofficials.com, and this applies for any high school sport. You'll put in your information and what sport you're interested in, and the Washington Officials Association, they receive that information, and they will send your information to the local assigners in your area for the sport you're interested in.
And why should people come out?
Well, because we need them out here, and it's fun. It's fun. We do have a great time, even though the folks in the stands may not always agree with us. They don't see and hear what we see and hear on the field. I have a great time where it's a good group of guys. It's a lot of fun. A lot of fun. We have a interesting trio this year that turned out. A father and his two kids, a son and daughter, and they're both. I think they're maybe freshmen in high school, and Dad wants to officiate, and his daughter's like, "I want to do it too, Dad," and they're going up to a jamboree tonight, and going down to Hermiston for another one tomorrow. They're just really excited. So it crosses all lines. It's just a lot of fun. It's a great thing.
Well, thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you for coming out and helping us. You've been a big help for us in the region as well, putting us out there and giving us this opportunity to talk about it.
Well, I wouldn't have games to cover if we didn't have officials to cover them.
That's true.
So thank you to Jeff Kinne for sitting down. Really great information in that, especially about the Ocho. Just kidding. But it's really opening up a lot of eyes to just what goes on the field. I think that's really interesting. A referee's view, whether or not they get the play right, because there's always going to be opposing views depending on who you're cheering for mainly. But yeah, thank you to our officials. And if you're interested in becoming an official, I'll post the link on my website as well as on the 1340 radio website if you are interested in becoming an official. So varsity games start tonight, and tomorrow night there is a big matchup in the MCC. So I want to cover more than just the MCC, but today we are talking about the MCC because it's Kamiakin and Chiawana tomorrow night at Edgar Brown Memorial Stadium in Pasco, the gravel pit.
Lowry, it's up, and it's good. That will be the ball game. It came down.
And last year, for those that remember that game, it went into overtime, and Chiawana won on a field goal. Aaron Lowry kicked a field goal, and everybody thought that Kamiakin would win that game. So it was a bit of an upset for Chiawana. Then Chiawana went on to have an undefeated season. And this year, it's Kamiakin that looks good on paper, and you really can't count Chiawana out. If you want to read the preview, you can find that on intangibleproduction.com. And then also happening tonight, not tomorrow night, Central Washington football. D2 football. D2 has a place in my heart. Shout out to Minot State. Go Beavers. But Central Washington football, and they have a really interesting story. So Central Washington is part of the GNAC. For football, though, they're part of the Lone Star Conference because not enough GNAC schools had football programs. So it was kind of like the Pac-4. The GNAC was the Pac-4. And just like the Pac-4, they're going to disappear. But with that being said, Central Washington went to the Lone Star Conference. So that's pretty cool. But tonight they kick off their season. They're playing FCS ranked number 10, Weber State. So they're in Utah. Kickoff is at 5 o'clock. But I had a chance to catch up with Chris Fisk, another North Dakota guy, about a little bit more about this year's team and what to expect from the Wildcats. At this point, young team, you have some great pieces, both sides of the ball, but a lot of question marks. What are the biggest questions that you're looking to answer this week?
Yeah, that's an easy one. It's in our D-line. We graduated basically 6 starters out of that D-line, guys that had lots and lots of game experience. We've got a lot of new faces up front in that D-line. And so, and if you know anything about Weber State University, their strength of their program is that offensive line. They're massive. They look like a bunch of redwood trees out there, and they're coached extremely well by an outstanding veteran coach in Coach Meyer. And so that'll be the place where, you know, we're either going to be able to stay in this thing or not, is how we handle their offensive line and their run game. They're extremely proficient at running the football. And, you know, we got a lot of new faces. That doesn't mean that they're bad faces. They're just new faces. And those kids have worked extremely hard. We have kind of the same mirrored thing on the offensive side. We've got some new faces on the O-line. We graduated 3 starters off of last year's team, and then we had one guy that graduated, had more eligibility left, but decided to go to med school, and which we can all understand. He was ready to get out and hit med school. But you know, the same thing on the offensive line is we've got some guys that are back that have considerable starts. Axel Isaacson, Noah Thompson's back off of injury from last year, so both of our tackles are back. But we're also replacing a center that was an outstanding center for us in Scotland Vise from you know, being a 3-year starter there. So we've got a new center and some new interior guys. And so and Weber is that type of team. We're up front at defensive line and defensive tackle, nose guard. Those guys challenge you. They're talented up there. They're big, they're strong, and they're built to stop the run. And so we'll have our work cut out for us. But again, you know, in talking to those 2 position groups, it's don't worry about results. Are we doing the things play by play that we can do to improve through this game?
And with starting off with Weber State, it's really good that you're playing a tough FCS school, and that's kind of something that you've built. So talk about your philosophy behind the schedule, where you're literally hitting your players in the nose right away to kind of get them prepared for season.
Yeah, you know, we kind of talk about it a lot. I think it's always, one, it's great for the kids to go play an FCS team. And I think teams at the top of that Big Sky Conference are the teams that we want to play. You know, it'd be nice to get a bottom feeder every once in a while and see what you could do. But when you play those teams that are at the top of the conference, they're at the top for a reason, right? They run great programs. You can learn a lot just by being around it and seeing how the kids in those programs approach the game and the intensity and competitive spirit that they play with. So there's a lot to learn just by going through that process about the game. But, you know, you definitely really want to go out and put yourself on that stage. It's not something that I think anybody backs down from. I think our kids, you know, in their mind, they should all probably be playing at that level. And so to get that opportunity to showcase yourself, and the beauty of these games is you just never know who's going to have that performance that really stands out for you. And we've certainly had those over the years. And so it'll be fun to watch those guys go and handle it. But it's also a great test of their mental maturity. It's a great test of their toughness, their mental toughness and physical toughness, because again, you're going to go through some adverse moments through those games.
This fall camp, a lot of young players. Preseason doesn't really mean much, but who has stood out to you in the preseason, in this fall camp?
Yeah, you know, offensively, JJ Lemming, our quarterback, you know, whose role in the past has kind of been our 2, and really did a nice job last year coming in and taking over for our quarterback who was injured. And he's had a great spring ball. He had a great summer. He had a great fall camp. I think we have a lot of confidence in him to run our system. And so I think we're really excited about him, number 1. We're really excited. We've got a backup quarterback in Kennedy McGill, who we're very excited about as well. He's done a great job as a great kid, has great athleticism. And then our wide receiver core that, you know, really didn't have a great season a year ago, but has really worked hard through the winter and had a great summer, made the commitment to be around each other all summer long and their quarterbacks, and really have our passing game improved from a year ago. And so that whole wide receiver core is full of some veteran guys right from your area. Marcus Cook kind of leading off that group, you know, fast, athletic kid who's fearless in his size. And so we're looking for big things from them. You know, I think our most talented position group is probably our tailback position group with, you know, Trajan Henderson, Tyler Flanagan, Cam Daniels, who all saw action last year, and Tyler being a kid that's been a 2-year starter for us as a returner. Trajan pretty much starting the whole season. Cam Daniels had a heck of a year last year. And then we've got a young guy, Justice Taylor, who's a redshirt freshman for us, who's had a heck of a fall camp as well. So we're really excited about that tailback room. And, I think that's as talented a room as that we have right now. Defensively, our secondary is back and intact. We've got our All-American corner, Pat Rogers, back, who's been, business as usual for Pat, through fall camp. And Tanner Volk is back at free safety, who we just named the number 44, which is the, kind of the captain of our defensive group, and honored him with that number. We had Dante Hamilton back the other night at practice to hand that out to him. And so we're excited about him. We've got a young linebacker. The tradition of Mike linebacker here at Central is very deep and storied, and all of those great Mike linebackers that we've come through here. We've got another great young one here in Brett McCullough, who will be a sophomore, not a redshirt sophomore. He played as a freshman as well. He'll be a sophomore this year. He's had a great fall camp. I've got a returning starter at will linebacker and Brett Akamus, and our nickel defender, Dom Weberg, who was been a 2-year starter for us, going on his 3rd year. And so our whole secondary is back intact. It's really what's going on in front of those guys that we got to figure out and get that. So we've had a lot of, it's a funny team that way, where, everywhere but the line of scrimmage, we have experience back, we have veterans back, and, we've got some new faces in the front.
Thank you to Chris Fisk and the Wildcat Athletic Department. Great people over there. And we'll be covering Wildcat athletics throughout this fall. And what do you want to hear? I know kind of changed the formatting of the show, and I love covering a lot of different sports. There's a lot of passionate sports fans in a lot of different sports, but I want to know what you want to hear this week. We kind of split it into 2, and just kind of going around and telling the stories, listening to things that I think are interesting, and content that you're not getting anywhere else, as well as content that has meaning behind it rather than me just spewing my thoughts at you, right? So that's what I want to cover. So I want to know, I want to hear from you. What do you want to cover? Who should I talk to? Reach out to me on social media at Jamie Council TV. And you might be listening to this on 1340 ESPN, your Tri-Cities leader in sports, via podcast or even via YouTube. So please like, subscribe, all of those good things. Or for those listening on 1340, I'll see you next week, every Thursday at noon for the Sports Council. So that will wrap up this week's episode. Thank you so much for listening in. Until next time, I'm Jamie Council.